I believe he's a student representative on the board, I think. And I'm going to tell you guys right out of the gate that this guy here, he's out of step with everyone else. But listen to this guy.
He's wearing
My
a
name
mask.
is Eli Gillitzer. I live at 1536 Sapphire Way,
The giveaway right there, Scarlett, right?
The case recently brought against the board by WILL is at once embarrassingly ill-conceived and also violently bigoted, a borderline call for legal persecution of all trans people across Wisconsin. The actual situation in particular presented by WILL is ridiculous given a moment of scrutiny. What is the actual problem in this situation other than a trans student existing? That a student of the school undressed in a public locker room? If undressing there constitutes harassment, then clearly the issue isn't biological sex differences, as I have to deal with uncomfortably undressed guys every swimming unit, and all of them have the exact same genitalia as I do. If you are worried about privacy in a locker room,
but that's the point,
you
dude.
to go into one of the stalls. My personal solution is not to look at other students' genitals. If we instead force trans students in the locker room of their biological sex, what is the response when they begin to undergo hormones and surgery? When WILL attorney Dan Lennington says, we're upset because someone exposed their penis to 4 teenage girls, what does a trans boy born female change if they get surgery for a penis? If the women's locker room is policy and WILL enforce, then he'd be exposing his penis to teen girls. If a trans girl starts estrogen but doesn't get surgery, she will grow breasts but still have a penis. By Dan's standards, she can't change in the boys' locker room. She'd be exposing her breasts to teen boys.
Oh my God.
Women's locker room either, because she'd be exposing her penis to teen girls. Where does she change? WILL doesn't want her changing anywhere. They don't want her being anywhere. Dan's standards, sure as hell, aren't based on biological sex.
This is gold.
So when he says that this isn't a transgender issue, he must be
He only goes 3
stupid
minutes.
or lying and hoping everyone else is stupid enough to believe him. He, WILL, and many more are coming to the board to call for the systematic, targeted exclusion and ostracization of trans kids. The assertion that trans inclusion in single-sex spaces creates danger for anybody is to allege not only that people of the same sex are incapable of harassing, assaulting, or otherwise harming each other, but also to assert that trans people are themselves dangerous predators. A belief that's nothing but a reissue of the homophobic rhetoric that promoted policies and violence against homosexuality across the country for so long. It is darkly comic that the same people pretending to be so concerned about the safety of our students are some of the same ones who have actively called for violence in public and on social media against trans students and children.
No one ever done that.
No one.
Frankly, current district policy is
I would say
laughable.
give us
The
one
separation
example of
locker rooms by
that.
sex, no matter the circumstances, is just a terrible policy the moment you give it any thought. Thank you.
He got buzzed.
Let's
Yeah,
pause
maybe
there for a
stop
second.
it. Yeah,
All
pause it.
Oh my
So this
God.
guy, the mask was the giveaway, right?
Yep.
That was the big giveaway of where this was going. This guy, I don't even know where to begin with this guy, except he's a walking caricature, right? He's a walking symbol of the weakness of the left's argument. They just go for emotion. You want to kill all trans people. You want to incite violence. You hate all trans. No. I don't think anybody reasonable, like 99.999% of the people that have an issue with what allegedly happened in that locker room don't hate transgender people.
Not at all.
Don't hate gay people. I, for one, I don't care what if gay people want to get married.
Gay. This
Who they
isn't
wanna
gay
love.
lesbian.
Right.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's about the rights of the 14-year-old girls who are freshman girls to not see male genitalia in adult males' genitalia in a school locker room. Like it's really very case specific.
Yes, and it kind of showed the confusion that he's like, well, what if there's breasts? And, you know, I mean, they're 14 to 17 years old. I think the solution is to have some separate spaces. That's just the best solution. And further along, there was a mom who spoke, who said she has she has a gay child. So she's like, this isn't at all about gay lesbian students. And then she also says that she has a daughter who plays boys football, and her daughter has to change in janitor closets and all these different places for her protection and to not make the boys uncomfortable. And that's just the way it is. Like, she's the only female on this all male team. So when she has to change, they find somewhere, they try to accommodate her, but they don't make all the boys leave the locker room so she can go in and shower.
They don't let her change in the locker room.
No, they don't.
In front of the boys.
For her. They find a space.
Yeah. Right. So I agree. When he says, and this is a typical left-wing argument, well, where are they supposed to change? You don't want them to change anywhere. No. You know how you go to Target as well, or Walmart, and there's sort of family bathrooms and sort of anyone can go in, like single-use bathrooms? That would be one possibility when it comes to bathrooms, or you could have a shower in there. Like, there's different accommodations the school district could make. Or just have a separate space for people transitioning.
Yeah.
Because there are competing rights here. And I feel like people like that speaker and on the left, they completely disregard the fact that the 14-year-old girls have rights here.
Well, and that's what seems to always be ignored here. That is the last consideration, is these 4 14-year-old girls that had to sit there in the shower and look at this. Like, no one seems to care about those girls. It's everything about this 18-year-old male who was showering. You know, my other point is, what is wrong? It seems to me a good compromise here would it be to have a third locker room, third bathroom for transgender people. Why is that not being considered? Why aren't we doing that?
We could call
it
gender neutral. We call it a gender neutral space because maybe there are girls or boys that are also very shy. Maybe they're fresh. Maybe they don't want to change. Like, just have a gender neutral area that provides privacy for anyone who desires privacy. And then it doesn't have to be specific. It's gender neutral. As a matter of fact, my own 16-year-old daughter just told me that she often gets embarrassed just changing in front of all the girls. So she always finds a corner, and she would love if there was some more privacy, even in same-sex areas. So maybe a very shy child can use that space because that also exists. Maybe there's a girl struggling with an eating disorder or something else, and she doesn't want her body to be seen. So let's figure out something, and it could be multi-purpose, used for different reasons. And I just think that that's just the obvious solution. And I think most trans people that are going through this want that. I think they don't want to sort of be on display. They don't want this kind of attention. And which makes me think, in this particular case, as we know, I don't know the name for it, but there is a sexual fetish where men like to dress as women or be in a women's space. There's something that's for them exciting about doing this. This just sounds like somebody who he disrobed in front of them. He showered next to them. He didn't go to a far corner. He didn't wait till they left. They were in their swimsuits. They were showering quickly. And as you know, Jessica, like, you both have teenage kids, you know how short a time span they have before they have to get to their next class. They're moving fast. He wasn't a part of that swim unit. Dan said that today. I listened to him in an interview. So he was just there. Like, it seems like he just walked in and decided, I can use this space. There's a lot of questions I have about the details surrounding this, but I think it's very obvious that these girls were violated. This is a Title IX case, and it should have been handled differently.
Well, there's nothing that the school district has said that has negated the argument that the girls were violated by being forced to see something that they shouldn't have to see, against their wishes at a very, very tender age. I've been rather appalled by the school district's lack of transparency over this. And so the school district put out, a press release in which they basically said this violated district practices, which, Jim, you had flagged for me. You said that's a really odd semantical choice of language. But then they went on to say this, shouldn't have happened. We took steps to make sure it didn't reoccur. It won't reoccur. So that's sort of acknowledging it happened and that it wasn't right and that they're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But then they threw in this line saying, but there were all these inaccuracies and people, all these uninformed news articles, blah, 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 but failed to say a single specific thing that was actually inaccurate. So what I watched happen with great interest, because I'm obviously very interested in media bias issues, is the liberal media, like the Wisconsin State Journal, grabbed that single line on inaccuracies. They threw it into their headlines, and then they buried everything else. They buried the fact the school district was basically admitting it happened. And then all the liberal comment writers went on their social pages of like the State Journal and said, aha, see, it's Fox News. Fox News is being inaccurate, blah, blah, blah. It's inaccurate. So we can't trust a word Fox News says. And they made it all about like Fox News and diverted the outrage and the attention off of the real issues. I thought it was a classic example of media bias. But Jim, I thought you were right to flag that clever use of semantics. What does that mean? It ran against or didn't conform with, or however they said it, district practices.
I mean, the way I read it is there's always a difference between policy and practice, right? An institution can have a policy in place, but that doesn't mean that policy is necessarily being followed. It's what's the institution's practice. And so it is interesting as to when they use the variation, and they never explained it. And that's part of the problem here. They talked about various news organizations with all their articles. They got it wrong. I'm sorry. We wrote on it. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel wrote on it the next day. And I think, was it the Masson.com, I think, this story. But all of those stories were based on Will's press release. And so all the facts remained the same through all the stories. And it was just very interesting that the school board, why can't the school come out and say what about the story was wrong? You don't have to identify anything, any of the students or anything. Tell us what was incorrect, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, you're right. So how is it a privacy issue for them to come out and say something didn't happen or this fact is untrue specifically? If it's untrue, say it, because there's nobody's privacy violated because you're saying it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's a complete dishonest dodge. They're just using this privacy argument to not have to admit the facts or to, actually to throw a bunch of dust in the air, to divert attention from the controversy. I thought it was really a disgracefully non-transparent press release.
Well,